Hello, let us start our discussion on quantum mechanics. Um, in your MSc class, we study quantum mechanics using the language of linear algebra. So, before we start this mathematical foundations of quantum mechanics and formulation of quantum mechanics in the language of linear algebra, let us pause some time and ask this question: why do we need the language of linear algebra to study quantum mechanics? Or what is the motivation of this particular mathematical structure? In order to understand that, um, we will start with an experiment uh, which which was there in the initial initial time of quantum mechanics, Stern-Gerlach experiment. You have studied Stern-Gerlach experiment. It is considered to be the first experiment which provided the evidence for the spin angular momentum or spin magnetic dipole moment of electron, and it also showed that one component of spin angular momentum is always quantized. So, in this section, we want to use Stern-Gerlach experiment or the Stern-Gerlach measurement method as a tool to understand some characteristics of measurement in a quantum system. So before I use Stern-Gerlach apparatus as such a tool, let us briefly review this Stern-Gerlach experiment so that we can fully understand the mechanism there. So Stern-Gerlach experiment. As you may know, this experiment is named after Otto Stern and Walter Gerlach. They did this experiment in 1921. So you note the year. This was before even de Broglie proposing the de Broglie hypothesis. That was in 1923-24 at that time. So this experiment came before the development of quantum mechanics, proper quantum mechanics. So in this experiment, the experimental structure is apparatus is something like this. There is an oven that produces silver atoms. So they have a beam of silver atoms, and this beam is made very narrow using a collimator. Then this beam is allowed to pass through a region where we apply a magnetic field, and this is a non-uniform magnetic field. Okay, let us say. So one pole I have made in a wedge shape. Okay, so that the magnetic field is not uniform. Okay, more field lines are concentrated here. So the number of field lines per unit area is greater here, less here. So we can say that the magnetic field decreases along this direction. Okay, these directions we can take like this. Let us say the vertical direction is z direction, and perpendicular and outward towards u is x direction, and towards right is y direction. Okay, suppose these are the axes. So this is the magnetic field, non-uniform magnetic field. And there is a detector here. Which can be a screen coated with a scintillating material. So this is the initial direction of the beam. When no magnetic field is applied, the beam goes straight and strikes here. Okay, but when this non-uniform antifield is applied, what happens, what was observed is that nearly half of the silver atoms are deflected upward and strikes the screen somewhere here, and the other half is deflected downward and strikes the screen somewhere here. So this was the experiment. Okay, so a beam of silver atoms are allowed to pass through a non-uniform antifield. Then nearly half the silver atoms are deflected upward and strike some point, and the other half are deflected downward and strike some point. Okay. So we can ask the question, so if a magnetic field deflects silver atoms, then if there is a deflection due to the presence of the magnetic field, then this magnetic field must be exerting some force on the atoms. But these atoms are neutral atoms, okay, they are not ionized, they are neutral atoms. That means this force must not be magnetic Lorentz force, okay, Q into V cross B. That is possible only if there is a charged particle. So these are neutral atoms, so this force cannot be magnetic Lorentz force. Then what else can be the source of this force? Now we have a result that in the presence of a non-uniform antifield, a magnetic dipole will experience a force. Okay, the force experienced by a magnetic dipole in the presence of a non-uniform antifield is del of mu dot B, where mu is the magnetic dipole moment and B is the magnetic field. Okay, so if these silver atoms has some magnetic dipole moment, then this non-uniform field can exert a force on this silver atoms. So let us see if they can have some magnetic dipole moment. Okay, so we can ask the question whether they have magnetic dipole moment due to orbital motion of the electron around the nucleus. In other words, orbital magnetic dipole moment. Now, silver atoms has atomic number 47. Okay, and that means the number of electrons in silver atoms is 47. So their electronic configuration can be like this. Okay. Yes. So here we can see that the first 46 electrons are arranged in some sort of closed shell structure. Okay. Now, if we have a, in the case of a closed shell structure, the magnetic dipole moment is always 0. So there cannot be any contribution to magnetic dipole moment for the 46 electrons. So it means that the magnetic dipole moment of the electron of the silver atom, of a silver atom, must be coming from this electron, 5s electron, the electron in the 5s orbital, the single electron in the 5s orbital. We know that for S state, orbital angular momentum is 0. That means orbital magnetic dipole moment is also 0. So this silver atom cannot have any orbital magnetic dipole moment, but still there is this deflection. Okay, so it shows that there must be some other magnetic dipole moments for these silver atoms other than orbital magnetic dipole moment. Okay, so this additional magnetic dipole moment of a particle which is other than orbital magnetic dipole moment, this is called spin. Okay, so spin, we can say that Historically, the word spin comes through through a misunderstanding. Okay, so let's don't spend time on that now. But now let us understand that spin is this word spin is just another word given to this additional magnetic dipole moment of a particle. Okay, let us say intrinsic magnetic dipole moment. So the source of the force of the silver atoms, okay, must be some magnetic dipole moment which is other than orbital magnetic dipole moment, because this 5s1 electron, this last unpaired electron, since it is in the 5s state, there cannot be any orbital angular momentum or orbital magnetic dipole moment. So this additional magnetic dipole moment which must be responsible for this deflection or this force, let us call it intrinsic magnetic dipole moment, or simply spin magnetic dipole moment. Okay. Now, so what is the expression for the spin magnetic dipole moment of an electron? Where this mu is the magnetic dipole moment, spin magnetic dipole moment, E is the charge of the electron, m is the mass of the electron, and s is the spin angular momentum of the electron. And this factor G is called simply G factor, or gyro, sometimes gyromagnetic ratio, and its value is this G is 2.00232 according to the present exact measurement. This is the value, known value of G, 2.00232. So this is the expression for the spin magnetic dipole moment of the electron. So let us come back to this formula. So the force acting on this these silver atoms must be the force exerted by this non-uniform magnetic field on the spin magnetic dipole moment of each silver atom. Okay, now we can see that this magnetic field varies. The variation in the magnetic field is mainly along the z direction. Okay. So we can take the this expression. I can write as okay, the variation is mainly in the z direction. So this we don't have to consider the variation in the x and y direction. Let us consider the variation in the z direction. Okay, so we are taking the z component of the force. Okay, now here this is approximately equal to dou by dou z dou. Now here there will not be any much variation in the x and y component of the magnetic field. Main variation will be in the z component of the magnetic field. So in this expansion, I need to consider only the z components. Okay, that means we get mu z into b z. There is not much variation in the x and y component of the magnetic field. Okay, so in mu x dx plus mu y dy plus mu z dz, we need to consider only this one. The other components are almost constant. Now here this mu z component of magnetic dipole moment is a constant, which we can take it outside. So this is approximately mu z times dou v z by z. What is the z component of spin magnetic dipole moment? It is minus g e by 2m into sz, where sz is the z component of the spin. So I can substitute that value here. So this is approximately equal to minus g Now the rate of change of magnetic field with respect to z directions or with respect to z coordinate it is a decrease. Magnetic field is decreasing in this particular geometry. Magnetic field is decreasing along the z direction. So this rate of this dou b z by dou z is actually negative. So I can write this as this dou b z by dou z is negative of the modulus dou b z by dou z. Okay. Therefore, this expression z component of the force is, if I take this magnitude only, we get G E by 2m Sh magnitude of dou b z by dou z. We can see that G factor is a known quantity, E by 2m is a constant, and this dou b z by dou z, variation of rate of change of magnetic field with respect to the z direction, this is an experimentally known quantity. I mean, this is part of our experimental setup. So this is a known data. So this shows that this z component of the force is directly proportional to the z component of the speed. Okay, so we have this result. Fz is proportional to Sz. Okay, it's directly proportional to Sz. The other quantities are known in this experimental setup. What was the expected result based on a classical analysis, based on classical physics? See, this is the direction of this is the z direction, okay, or the direction in which the magnetic field is applied. Let us say this is the direction of spin angular momentum, and this is the angle between the two. Then this z component of spin we can write as s cos theta, where s is the magnitude of spin angular momentum. Okay. Now in the thermal environment of this oven, the source of silver atoms, we can expect that the spin angular momentum of the silver atoms are randomly oriented. Okay. So that means there are all possible values of theta. Okay, its direction can be anywhere. So the theta can vary from 180 degree up to 180 degree means the spin is opposite to z axis. 0 degree means spin is along z axis. That means it is expected, classically it was expected that Sz can have values from when theta is 180 degree you get minus s. So from minus of modulus s to when theta is equal to 0 degree you get plus modulus s. So from minus s to plus s, or from minus of modulus of spin angular momentum to plus modulus of spin angular momentum, and all possible values in between when theta continuously changes. So classically it was expected that if this is the direction of the incident beam, classically it was expected that this beam will be deflected based on the, see, Fz is proportional to Sz, but the Sz values are continuously changing. That was the classical expectation, from minus s to plus s. Okay, so depending upon the value of theta, there can be deflection. Okay, from minus from a minimum value to a maximum value. So it was expected that there will be, what you get on the screen will be something like a vertical patch like this. This was the expected result. Okay, there will be atoms deflected in small angles. Okay, in all possible angles, in all possible values. Okay, so there will be a vertical patch. Atoms will be deflected, spread out along this vertical patch. That was the expected result. Based on classical physics, non-physics at that time. But what was the actual experimental observation? There was one spot here, there was one spot here, two spots. Okay, there was no vertical patch, there was a single spot here, there was a single spot here. This was the actual observation. Okay, And so this shows that this is not correct. This picture is not correct. That means the spin angular momentum is not randomly oriented. Okay, there can have only two specific orientations with respect to the z-axis, and we can measure this displacement from the horizontal. This, how much is the z value along which this silver atoms are displaced upward and downward, that we can measure. Now if we measure this displacement, vertical displacement, we can calculate what was the vertical force, the force along the z direction. This we can calculate from the deflection. So if we can calculate this force, then we can calculate Sz. Okay, so experimentally it was found that Sz is equal to plus or minus h cross by 2, where h cross is h by 2 pi, its value is 1.0546 into 10 raised to minus 34 joules second. H is Planck's constant. So this atoms with Sz equal to plus h cross by 2 are deflected upward, and atoms with Sz is equal to minus h cross by 2 are deflected downward. Okay, so this Sz we can experimentally calculate, experimentally measure. So the observations of just two spots of deflection on the screen showed that the z component of spin angular momentum is quantized. Okay, and the z component of spin angular momentum can be written as ms into h cross, where ms is magnetic spin quantum number. So if we compare the two, we get the result that ms is equal to plus or minus half. Okay, now by making an analogy between the analogy of the algebra between orbital quantum number and magnetic orbital quantum number. Okay, we know that ml varies from minus L to plus L. Total 2L plus 1 values are there. Okay, if we make the same analogy here between spin quantum number and magnetic spin quantum number, since ms is equal to plus or minus half, okay, its extension should be from minus s to plus s. It shows that the spin quantum number of the electron must be half, so that ms values range from minus s to plus s, total 2s plus 1 values. If spin quantum number is half, 2s plus 1 is simply 2. That is these two values, ms equal to minus half and plus half. So in this way, from Stern-Gerlach experiment, experimentally one can deduce that the spin quantum number of electron is 1 by 2, magnetic spin quantum number is plus or minus half, and z component of angular momentum of the electron is quantized with the quantized values plus or minus h cross by 2. So actual experimental deduction is in the opposite direction. First we measure this deflection. From that we can calculate the z component of the force. From that we can calculate the z component of spin angular momentum. Okay, and we can reduce the magnetic dipole moment, magnetic spin quantum number values, and from that a spin quantum number of the electron. And this experiment, so here in this experiment we can have the doubt that silver atoms have 47 electrons. So even though we said that all the 46 electrons, the contribution of 46 electrons, since they are in closed shells, their contribution to magnetic dipole moment will be 0, and only the last unpaired electron, that 5s electron, contributes to the magnetic dipole moment. That we have argued, and since it's an s orbital electron, orbital magnetic dipole moment is 0, so there is only spin magnetic dipole moment. So, but we can have this doubt that this magnetic dipole moment of the silver atom, there may be some contribution from the other 46 electrons. Okay, so it may be possible that some of them may have they may have contributed orbital magnetic dipole moment. Okay, that could be the reason for this dipole moment and the deflection, there can be such doubts. Now in this experiment was in 1921, right? In 1927, the same experiment, this type of an experimental setup was repeated by T. Phipps and J.B. Taylor using a beam of hydrogen atoms. So instead of silver atoms, they used a beam of hydrogen atoms. Now in the case of hydrogen, it's very clear. There is only one electron, okay, and it is in the s orbit, ground state case. Ground state electron is in the s orbit, and there is no orbital angular momentum and no orbital magnetic dipole moment. So the only contribution to magnetic dipole moment must be spin magnetic dipole moment. Now when they repeated in 1927, when they repeated this experiment, they got the same results. Okay, nearly half of the hydrogen atoms were deflected upward, nearly the other half were deflected downward. So just the two spots, as in this case. And from the experimental measurements, they again got that Sz is equal to plus or minus h cross by 2. So the results clearly showed two things. One is there is some contribution to atomic magnetic dipole moment other than orbital magnetic dipole moment. Okay, and this new component of magnetic dipole moment, or this new intrinsic magnetic dipole moment, we call spin. Okay, that is one result. And secondly, the presence of only two spots on the screen, it shows that this component of this component, that is Z component of this magnetic dipole moment, or Z component of the spin value, spin angular momentum, is quantized. Okay, and these are the quantized values, plus or minus h cross by 2. So these are the two results established by Stern-Gerlach experiment. Okay, and in 1928, Dirac theoretically proved that electron should have an angular momentum other than orbital angular momentum. That is, the presence of spin angular momentum was theoretically proved by Dirac, and he also showed that the spin quantum number of the electron is 1 by 2. Okay, this was theoretical work was done in 1928. So this is a Stern-Gerlach experiment. And now let us introduce some notation. So here in this particular setup, you have a beam of atoms, and what we see is that nearly 50% of the atoms are deflected upward, and nearly the other 50% are deflected downward. So those atoms which are deflected upward are having Sz is equal to plus h cross by 2. Okay, or we can say that they are in Sh plus state. Okay, and those atoms which are deflected downwards are having Sz is equal to minus h cross by 2. We say that they are in Sh minus state. Okay, so these components are called Sz plus components. These are Sz minus components, and these components are also called upspin components. Okay, though they are having Sz is equal to plus h cross by 2, and these components are called downspin components. They are having Sz is equal to minus h cross by 2. So when the deflections are just two spots on the screen, okay, or in other words, when an initial beam is deflected into just two halves, then it's clear that Sz values are plus or minus h cross by 2, and the spin quantum number is 1 by 2, or in other words, this is a spin half system. The incident particles is a spin half system. Now, in the case of silver atoms, it's a spin half system, because even though there are 47 electrons, the 46 electrons did not contribute to, they do not contribute to spin angular momentum, because they are in closed shells. So only the last unpaired electron, that 5s electron, is contributing to spin angular momentum. So it's a spin half system. a beam of hydrogen atoms. There is only one electron. It's a spin-half system. So in such spin-half systems, the deflection will be only 2. Okay. If the spin involves other values like s equal to 1, spin 1, okay, or spin 3 by 2, then there will be more deflections, there will be more branching outs, there will be more spots. Okay. So that there will be deflection into four branches are possible. Okay, so let us stick on to spin-half systems. Now here, so what we see is that a Stern-Gerlach apparatus, given we have suppose the incident, you have a beam of identical particles which form a spin-half system, or these are spin-half particles, then a Stern-Gerlach apparatus can separate these particles based on their spin components. Okay. If the magnetic field is applied along the z direction as in this geometry, then the beam is separated into Sz plus 50% of the particles are separated as Sz plus components and 50% as Sz minus components, or upspin components and downspin components. Okay. Now here, suppose in this geometry, suppose the magnetic field is applied along the x direction. Okay, along this direction, x direction. Okay. Then what happens? So there is, you can see that there is nothing special about this z direction. Okay. If magnetic field is, suppose the apparatus as a whole is rotated and the magnetic field is along this direction, then you can place the screen horizontally, I mean in this fashion, perpendicular to the plane of this board. Then what you see is that if magnetic field is anomalous magnetic field, non-homogeneous magnetic field is along the x direction, then half of the particles will be deflected along along the plus x axis, and half of the atoms will be deflected along minus x axis. Okay. So what you get is, in that case, what you get is Sx is equal to plus or minus h cross by 2. Okay, we can say that half of the beam will be Sx plus components, half of the beam will be Sx minus components. Okay, so in this way, we can use a Stern-Gerlach apparatus as a device for separating an incident beam of particles into two components. If the incident beam of spin-half particles into two components. Okay. Into two components, and the spin component along the field direction will be quantized. Okay, that means if the field direction is z direction, then Sz component will be quantized. If the field direction is x direction, then Sx component will be quantized. So the important point is that the spin component along the field direction will be quantized. Right? So consider how we can use Stern-Gerlach apparatus as an analyzer. So the point is that suppose we have, as I have stated earlier, suppose we have an incident beam of spin-half particles, and we have a Stern-Gerlach apparatus where the non-homogeneous magnetic field is applied along the z-axis. Then what does this Stern-Gerlach apparatus do? It separates or filters or analyzes the incident beam into two components. Nearly half the particles are separated with the upspin component, that is Sz is equal to plus h cross by 2, or we call it Sz plus component, and the other half is separated as downspin component, or Sz equal to minus h cross by 2, we call it Sz minus component. So schematically I can draw it like this. This is the source of a beam of spin-half particles, and they are passed through a Stern-Gerlach apparatus where the non-uniform magnetic field is applied along the z direction. Okay, so when I say SGZ, it's a Stern-Gerlach apparatus that can separate the incident beam based on the spin component along the z axis, along the field axis. Here the field axis is z axis. Okay, so what is the output? Output is there will be nearly half the particles are separated as Sz plus component. That means this is Sz value is plus h cross by 2, or we call it upspin component. Okay, and the other half is separated as Sz minus component, and Sz value is minus h cross by 2, or we call it downspin component. So this is how a Stern-Gerlach apparatus is used as a filter or a separator or an analyzer. Now suppose the non-homogeneous magnetic field is along the another direction, let's say x direction, and we say that it's a Stern-Gerlach apparatus where the separation is based on a spin component along the field direction, that is x direction. What is the output? Nearly half the beam will be separated with Sx plus, other half will be separated with Sx minus. Okay, so here we are. Now we are going to use Stern-Gerlach apparatus as an analyzer or a separator or a filter to separate an incident beam of spin half particles based on their spin component along the field direction. If the field direction is z direction, we get 50% Sz plus component, 50% Sz minus component. If the field direction is x direction, we get 50% Sx plus component, 50% Sx minus component. Okay, I hope this is clear. So in the next class, what we are going to do is we are going to design a series of measurements based on an array of Stern-Gerlach devices. Okay, we call it a sequential Stern-Gerlach experiment, sequentially, one after the other. And this type of measurement, or this type of a setup will help us understand some characteristics of measurement in a quantum system. Okay, so once we understand that, we will come back to our earlier question, why we need linear algebra to study quantum mechanics, or why linear algebra is the proper language of quantum mechanics. Okay, so we will consider this in the next class.